The summer of 1877 rose over the White River country like a shimmering mirage, full of promise, full of danger. For a moment, it seemed the long trail of war and wandering might finally give way to something steadier. Crazy Horse stood at the center of it all, a war chief turned reluctant diplomat, a man balancing the fragile hopes of his people against the tightening grip of the agency world. But beneath the surface, the ground was shifting. Old rivalries stirred, new alliances formed in whispers. The Sundance fires burned bright, yet shadows gathered at their edges. Every handshake carried a hidden cost. Every promise echoed with uncertainty. And as the northern village prepared for the great buffalo hunt, forces far beyond the plains, political, personal, and spiritual, were already moving to shape the fate of the man who had never been conquered in battle. This is the story of a summer where hope and betrayal walked side by side, and where Crazy Horse, for the first time, found himself fighting enemies he could not see. Welcome to Chronicles of the Old West. This is episode 9 in our series, Spirit of the Thunder People, the life of Crazy Horse.
On Saturday, May 26, 1877, the day after General Crook's council, a new hand took the reins at Red Cloud Agency. Lieutenant Colonel Luther P. Bradley of the 9th Infantry assumed command of the post and the entire district of the Black Hills. Colonel Mackenzie and his 500 officers and men were departing, and with them went one of the last strong buffers between the surrendered northern bands and the uneasy world of agency life. Bradley was no stranger to the plains. He was an able, humane officer who, like Crook, quietly opposed the High Command's determination to force the Lakotas onto distant reservations. In the shifting currents of power and promise that followed surrender, he was a sensitive choice. That evening, Bradley sat down to write his wife. "All the principal men among the Indians are here today," he told her. Lieutenant William Philo Clark was there to make the introductions. "There are a great many fine-looking fellows among the wild Indians who lately came in," Bradley continued. Then, with a note of quiet fascination, he added, "I had an introduction to Crazy Horse and a handshake." The war chief was not what one might have expected, young, slender, mild-mannered. Yet even in that first meeting, Bradley sensed the quiet command that radiated from him. He is evidently the leader of his band, he later wrote. 2 days later, 972 Cheyennes left Red Cloud Agency for their new home in Indian Territory. Their departure, and Mackenzie's battalion riding out behind them, marked a subtle but dangerous shift in the balance of power. The great numbers of troops that had once awed the northern bands were thinning. Camp Robinson's strength dropped to barely 400 men. Some hours after the Cheyennes had gone, a lone warrior rode out of the northern bluffs. Lieutenant Clark was waiting. Crazy Horse sat in on the debriefing, hungry for news from the hunting grounds. The Cheyenne came from Lame Deer's camp. 3 weeks earlier, Colonel Nelson Miles had struck the village on a tributary of Rosebud Creek. Lame Deer was dead. 63 teepees, 30 tons of dried meat, and 450 horses had been taken. Led now by Lame Deer's son, Fast Bull, the survivors were regrouping near the forks of the Powder River. The question hung in the air. Were they coming in? Crazy Horse did not hesitate. He immediately detailed 3 warriors to carry tobacco to Fast Bull. the envoys, would ride at once. Clark reported the development to Crook with satisfaction. The cooperation between the war chief and the lieutenant was deepening. They were not friends. Each was too wary for that, but each understood the other's value. To Clark, Crazy Horse was the key to bringing in the last holdouts. To Crazy Horse, Clark was the vital conduit to military support for the northern reservation he still dreamed of securing on Beaver Creek. As June opened, they cultivated one another carefully. They spoke at length about the hunting expedition Crook had tentatively approved. For Crazy Horse, the hunt was more than food and ceremony. It was strategy. Escorted by troops to Cantonment Reno, he could press for formal approval of his chosen agency site before traveling on to Washington. But even as he worked the diplomatic path, he reminded everyone, subtly, forcefully, of his latent power. After the Cheyennes left, Lieutenant Bourke noted that Crazy Horse daily grew more insolent and intractable, thinking perhaps that he could manage matters better to suit himself. The war chief had measured the situation. He would cooperate with the army, but he would never surrender the autonomy of the northern people. The northern village moved to a new location on Little White Clay Creek, 6 miles northeast of the agency. Plans for the sun dance advanced rapidly. The council decided to hold the ceremony north of White River during the last week of June. After the dance, the bands would depart for the hunt. In Lakota geography, White River marked a boundary. By crossing it, Crazy Horse was reclaiming the primacy he had temporarily yielded to Red Cloud on the march to surrender. Not everyone approved. Tension simmered inside his own village. A moderate faction, weary of confrontation, found its voice in Little Big Man. Once less influential than Little Hawk, Little Big Man had begun carving out his own following. Late in May, he and Crazy Horse quarreled violently. According to Horn Chips, the cause was simple and human. Crazy Horse had forbidden Little Big Man from sleeping with one of the women in camp. They fought. From that day forward, they were deadly enemies. Little Big Man gathered his followers and moved his camp 2 miles up Little White Clay Creek, closer to the agency. The fracture was public. On the next ration day, the split widened. Military Agent Johnson was about to issue cattle to Crazy Horse's village when the interpreter interrupted. Little Big Man had asked for his cattle to be issued separately. Johnson, caught between factions, took the path of least resistance and served Little Big Man first. Crazy Horse flew into a fury. He refused his share, wheeled his horse, and rode back to camp with his people streaming behind him. He was in no mood to smooth feathers. Instead, he strengthened his village. On May 29th, Worm and 4 lodges, including the revered Elder Human Finger and the Sans Arc Sundance priest Foolish Heart, were transferred from Spotted Tail Agency. During the first week of June, the northern village crossed White River again and camped 3 miles north of the agency. The responses to the Sundance and hunt invitations told the story of Oglala politics. Young Man afraid of his horse and Yellow Bear sent presents and indicated their bands wished to join. But Red Cloud and American Horse worked against him, instructing their Akachita to forbid movement to the northern camp. The air was thick with unresolved tension. Beef Issue Day, June 9th, brought the conflict into the open. butcher Ben Tibbetts had selected 29 fine cattle for the northern village. The herd was driven out. Crazy Horse rode up, conferred with his warriors, and objected. His village was accustomed to 31 head. He refused the cattle and ordered them driven back into the corral. Then he spotted a stray steer that had escaped from another pen. He ordered it captured. With 30 head now, he started homeward. Agent Johnson protested weakly that he would adjust the count on the next beef day, but he had been outmaneuvered. Clark was present, but chose not to confront the war chief directly. He understood the threat. "Some of the young bucks here are a little restless," he wrote to headquarters, "and I also think the moral influence which was exercised by the great number of troops is lacking." Later that same day, civilian visitors, Richard and Clay Deer, brothers of the agency trader, rode out to the northern village. Crazy Horse welcomed them, seated on the ground, surrounded by his principal chiefs in council. He presented the party with a pair of moccasins. The visitors left pleased, charmed by the war chief's hospitality. The following day, Sunday, June 10th, Clark called a council to discuss Fast Bull's fugitives. Crazy Horse and all the agency chiefs attended. Clark warned that it was detrimental to let them remain out, especially before the delegation left for Washington. The leaders agreed that once the scouts returned, they would decide on action, even forcible return if necessary. On June 13th, the scouts returned. They had followed Fast Bull's trail to the Blue Earth Hills, but confirmed no other Lakotas or Cheyennes remained on the hunting grounds. The application to hunt was renewed. They hoped to depart in about 25 days, July 8th, just after the Brûlé Sun Dance. More than 300 lodges were expected from Red Cloud Agency, with substantial additions from Spotted Tail. Clark continued his useful alliance. He had received compensation money for ponies confiscated the previous October and proposed to deliver it personally at Spotted Tail Agency. Crazy Horse likely accompanied him. 2 eyewitness accounts placed the war chief there that summer. One remembers him at Trader George Jewett's store. A handsome man of about 36, not so dark, with hazel eyes and long light brown hair. His scalp lock, ornamented with beads, hung to his waist. Braids, wrapped in fur, dressed in broadcloth, he moved with relaxed confidence. The second account reveals a different purpose. Crazy Horse had come to pressure the Miniconjous and Sans Arcs to attend his sun dance and join the hunt, against Spotted Tail's wishes. When one attempt to recruit Black Fox was discovered, Touch the Clouds rebuked him. Crazy Horse returned home unsuccessful. Back at Red Cloud Agency, the village completed its final preparations. About 185 lodges formed the Sundance Camp on Spring Creek when the hoop was raised on June 22nd. On Tuesday, June 26th, the 4 holy days began under a blazing sun and whirling dust. Foolish Heart directed the rites. The people moved to the formal ceremonial ground. Scouts located the sacred cottonwood. The next morning, the entire village processed in finery to fell the tree. Old women danced and sang. 4 brave warriors and 2 virgins struck the final blows. The pole was brought home as a captive enemy. An effigy of a foe was erected at the center of the campground. Then came the sham battle, planned to reenact the Custer fight, with agency visitors cast as Custer's doomed force. It nearly became real. Instead of light ritual blows, some northern warriors struck hard with clubs. The agency men drew revolvers and opened fire. Chaos erupted. Clark galloped in, shouting, and stopped the shooting before blood was truly shed. The bad blood between agency and northern Lakotas had been laid bare. On June 29th, the climax. 2,000 Lakotas gathered. The dancers, already fasting, underwent the ordeal. 7 men ultimately pledged the full self-torture. They were painted fantastically, adorned with war bonnets. Foolish Heart pierced their breasts with skewers tied to the pole. The drummers quickened. The dancers surged back against the ropes with all their strength, blowing eagle-bone whistles, mirrors flashing in the sun. One tore free in 15 minutes. Others struggled for an hour. One fainted. Friends tore the rope free to save his honor. Exhausted men were carried to the sacred teepee. As the sun sank, the drama of captivity, suffering, and liberation was complete. Crazy Horse had watched it all. The ceremony had united Northern and agency people, but the unity was fragile. With the hunt only days away, he could not rest. Early the next morning, he departed once more for Spotted Tail Agency, determined to lend his presence to the sun dances there and draw the people together behind the vision of a northern homeland. Far to the east, however, decisions were already being made. Bureaucrats and commissioners had chosen new agency sites on the Missouri River, places the Lakotas despised. A collision course had been set. The summer that had begun with handshakes and cautious hope was darkening. Midsummer, 1877, burned across the White River country, the peak of the Lakota ceremonial year. 3 other sun dances had been scheduled, each one a mirror, reflecting the growing charisma of Crazy Horse. At Spotted Tail Agency, the Miniconjou and Sans Arc leaders had bowed to Spotted Tail's rejection of the Oglala war chief's ceremony. Yet when they raised their own hoop, the central drama was quietly co-opted by Crazy Horse's wartime brothers. Kicking Bear, Black Fox, and Flying Hawk, all comrades from the great fights, underwent the agonizing self-torture, offering their pain and prayers for him. Another cousin, Fast Thunder, was chosen to make the piercings. On June 30th, as the dance reached its searing climax, Crazy Horse appeared among the crowd. He moved with quiet dignity, sitting with the holy men, while his kinsmen fulfilled their vows. His presence alone seemed to sanctify the gathering. Back at Red Cloud Agency, a third ceremony sponsored by the agency, Oglala bands collapsed. Few people came. The once proud hoop stood nearly empty and had to be abandoned. After the magnificent pageant in Crazy Horse's village, the failure was a humiliating blow to Red Cloud and the other agency chiefs. The Brule leadership, sensing opportunity, scheduled their own sun dance to open around July 1st at the crossing of Chadron Creek. Invitations went out to both agencies. Again, Crazy Horse and his retinue were prominent. He renewed his earlier efforts, pressing key headmen to join him back at the Oglala Agency in time for the planned hunt departure on July 8th. The northern deciders refused to leave the Brule camp, but Black Shield, smarting from his loss of influence, agreed to follow Crazy Horse. 2 other Miniconjou leaders, Wounded Hand and High Lodge, accepted the tobacco. Black Fox, still healing from his own Sundance wounds, also pledged to come. Most significant of all was Elkhead, the revered Sans Arc holy man, keeper of the sacred calf pipe, the most sacred of all Lakota bundles, chose to move with only 23 lodges of Miniconjus, Oglalas, and Sans Arcs. In carrying the calf pipe to the northern village, Elkhead bestowed the highest religious sanction upon Crazy Horse and the vision of a northern homeland. The war chief's influence now carried both martial and spiritual weight. On July 1st, a new civilian agent arrived at Red Cloud Agency. Dr. James S. Irwin would guide Oglala affairs through the next 18 turbulent months. His first impression of Crazy Horse was dismissive. The war chief had assumed his usual awkward, bashful demeanor. Irwin described him as but a bashful, girlish-looking boy. Unimpressed by the defections from Spotted Tail, Irwin approved the transfers on July 7th. Crazy Horse's village swelled to roughly 250 lodges, 140 Oglala, with guests from other divisions. It was now the strongest single band at the agency. At the same time, the reorganization of the Indian Scouts cemented his elevated status. All previous enlistments had expired on June 30th. Lieutenant Clark, ever the careful architect of alliances, streamlined the system. Beginning July 1st, Scouts were formed into 5 companies. At Red Cloud Agency, Company C, mixed between Northern and Agency warriors, was placed under the leadership of the Northern Village. On July 4th, upon returning from the Brûlé Sundance, Crazy Horse was re-enlisted as First Sergeant. His deciders, Little Hawk, Little Big Man, Big Road, and Iron Crow, became sergeants. He Dog, Four Crows, No Water, and others served as corporals. The arrangement was a masterpiece of subtle power. While Red Cloud, Young Man Afraid of His Horse, and American Horse held sergeant positions in another company, Clark's elevation of Crazy Horse created dangerous jealousies. In one telling scout meeting held in Clark's quarters, the theater of hierarchy was unmistakable. Clark sat on the rim of his office chair, elevated, addressing the sergeants and corporals in fluent sign language as they passed the pipe on the floor. Red Cloud was absent. Crazy Horse, however, occupied a second chair close to Clark's desk. Raised above the others, a clear declaration of parity with the lieutenant and supremacy among the Lakotas. For the moment, Crazy Horse sat confidently in that chair. He trusted Crook's spring promises and the deepening relationship with Clark. But as the second week of July opened, that confidence would begin to fracture. Far to the east, national crisis intruded. The Great Railroad Strike of 1877 had erupted with riots in Chicago. The Hayes administration was consumed by domestic unrest. General Crook was called away for emergency consultations and would not return west until late August. The long-planned Washington delegation was stalled. With it, Army support for the hunting expedition wavered. Lieutenant Clark was detached to Fort Laramie for 11 days, beginning July 16th. Before he left, he and Colonel Bradley met with Crazy Horse and the chiefs. They explained the delay and proposed a new sequence. The delegation to Washington would precede the hunt. The Northern deciders did not openly contest the change. Crazy Horse held his tongue, but misgivings stirred. He wanted the agency site fixed on Beaver Creek first. Only then would he travel east. As Short Bull later recalled, this disagreement over sequence planted the first seeds of serious misunderstanding. Crazy Horse had watched the Cheyennes march to Indian Territory. He feared that if he went to Washington before securing the Northern Agency, officials might pressure or intimidate him into accepting the same fate. Rumors, fed by jealous agency leaders, amplified his doubts. Some whispered that Red Cloud and others told him dark stories, that Washington would arrest him for Custer, or that he might be made head chief only to be stripped of power. The tribal consensus for a purely northern agency was crumbling. Red Cloud and others now favored a compromise site near the forks of White River. Into this atmosphere of growing suspicion walked an unexpected softening influence. Crazy Horse had fallen in love. Near the agency in Camp Robinson stood Joe Larrabee's cabin, part of a small mixed-blood community. Long Joe, a 50-year-old frontiersman long associated with the Cheyennes, had a daughter named Helen, Nellie to her family, Brown Eyes to the Lakotas. 18 years old, she was beautiful, willful, flirtatious, and pursued by many suitors, including perhaps Lieutenant Clark himself and an Oglala, known as Sioux Bob. Exactly when Crazy Horse first met her remains lost to history, but the courtship was conducted with discretion. Nellie fixed him with a bold, captivating gaze that unsettled the reserved war chief. Soon he was making quiet evening visits. He sent ponies as gifts. Sioux Bob's claim was suddenly in jeopardy. Many of Crazy Horse's followers disapproved. Conservative voices warned against the match. He consulted his closest advisors with the pipe, but his heart had already decided. Before Clark left for Fort Laramie, the lieutenant teased his first sergeant and encouraged the marriage, sensing it might mellow the war chief and bind him more firmly to peace. Yet, politics refused to wait. During the third week of July, nearly all of Crazy Horse's leading men partially separated from the main village. The initiative came from the moderates, led by his emerging rival, Little Big Man. Little Big Man argued for accepting the new schedule and echoed darker suspicions that Washington might mean arrest or death for the slayer of Custer. The separation was only partial. Camps moved for better grass or water, but no open rupture occurred. Then, late in the month, encouraging signs appeared. Clark returned. 9 lodges from Fast Bull's fugitive camp surrendered at Spotted Tail. Fast Bull himself seemed poised to come in. On July 27th, confidence seemed restored. That Friday morning, Clark gathered 70 headmen in the agency council room. Crazy Horse and Little Big Man sat beside Red Cloud and the agency leaders. Clark read General Crook's message. The buffalo hunt was back on. They could leave as soon as ready, absent about 40 nights. 18 men would go to Washington around September 15th. The chiefs listened with apparent pleasure. Young Man Afraid of His Horse proposed the promised feast be held at Crazy Horse and Little Big Man's lodge. Red Cloud and a few others quietly left the room in protest. Crazy Horse rode home across White River with every reason for satisfaction. The hunt was restored. Departure could come as early as August 5th. The peace process seemed back on track. But that same evening, Red Cloud's messengers visited Agent Irwin. They launched a sustained attack on Crazy Horse. To the aging bad-faced leader, the rise of the Northern war chief had become intolerable. Red Cloud had spent years cultivating his position as principal chief of the Oglalas, skillfully balancing accommodation with the whites against his people's interests. Now, this unyielding newcomer, this unreconstructed fighter who had never bent the knee until defeat stared him in the face, threatened to eclipse him. Clark's clear preference for Crazy Horse, the scout reorganization that elevated Northern leaders, and whispers that Crook might push for Crazy Horse to be recognized as head chief in Washington had sharpened Red Cloud's jealousy into something colder and more calculated. He was not a man to yield power lightly. The messengers painted a damning portrait. Crazy Horse was sullen, morose, and chafing under restraint. Once on the hunt with 240 well-armed warriors, he would surely break for the warpath and bring disaster down on them all. He was tricky, selfish, and unfaithful to the broader tribe. The ammunition issued for hunting would be turned against the whites. Irwin listened intently. The impression was indelible. Red Cloud had opened a second front, not merely undermining Crazy Horse among the people, but deliberately eroding his standing with the new civilian authorities. In Red Cloud's mind, this was necessary politics, protecting his hard-won influence, his people's stability under his guidance, and ensuring that the fragile accommodations he had forged with the Wasatch were not shattered by the Crazy Horse's restless ambition. The following day brought more positive signs for the northern village. New ration tickets were issued. Dr. Irwin had completed a fresh census and authorized a 15% increase. Ammunition sales were permitted for the hunt. Yet Irwin, now deeply influenced by Red Cloud's warnings, grew reluctant. Crazy Horse remained unaware of the full extent of the intrigue. He had secured the sacred calf pipe. His village was strong. The hunt loomed. Love had entered his life. For a brief moment, the war chief stood at the center of a fragile equilibrium. Military respect, spiritual sanction, and personal happiness, all within reach. But shadows were lengthening. Jealousy, rumor, and broken promises were gathering like storm clouds over the White River. The man who had never been conquered in battle would soon face an enemy far more insidious than any bluecoat column. August, the moon of black cherries, dawned with rare promise at Red Cloud Agency. The northern village hummed with a happiness that had been absent since the surrender. Even Crazy Horse's deep well of suspicion seemed, for a moment, to have run dry. The announcement of the great hunt had lifted the spirits of the people. Billy Garnett remembered the war chief looking well satisfied. Lodges buzzed with preparation. Farewell feasts were planned to reassure the agency that the northern Oglalas intended to return in time for the delegation's journey to Washington. Lieutenant Clark reported receiving invitations to no fewer than 3 such feasts on the 1st of the month. From Washington came the long-awaited authorization. The Indian office wired Crook on August 2nd, directing him to select 15 or 20 leaders from Red Cloud and Spotted Tail agencies. The news arrived alongside the lifting of the ammunition ban. Trading stores did brisk business. In the agency council room, Clark read Crook's telegram aloud. The Oglala leaders listened with measured approval, though they insisted a larger delegation was needed. Clark proposed that the recognized band chiefs form the core, with Crazy Horse and Little Big Man representing the northern village. This, too, was accepted quietly. Yet even as the village prepared to move north to Little Cottonwood Creek on August 5th, new tensions simmered beneath the surface. Earlier that same day, in the northern camp, A strange woman had walked boldly across the grounds. The teepee skins were rolled up for the summer heat. Inside, Black Shawl sat sewing despite her lingering illness. Nellie Larrabee entered without hesitation and spoke quietly to the war chief's wife. The gossips of the village could scarcely believe their eyes. In the weeks of secret courtship, Black Shawl's reaction had been the great unknown. Now, Nellie spoke with forthright courage, laying bare the depth of her feelings for Crazy Horse. Black Shawl, her body weakened by respiratory sickness and a painfully swollen arm, showed a generosity of spirit that moved even the sharpest tongues. She would not stand in the way. A second wife, she said, might enliven his spirit. When Crazy Horse returned from the agency that afternoon, Nellie stepped from the teepee to meet him. To his visible surprise, she announced that Black Shawl had given her consent. Awkwardly, almost abashed, the great war chief accepted the unorthodox proposal and told her to bring her things. For the next 30 days, Nellie Larrabee would live as Crazy Horse's second wife. Her parents soon appeared, Long Joe disgruntled, but accepting the marriage for the moment. The village watched with intense fascination. In 1877, on August 5th, Spotted Tail and the Brule leadership moved swiftly to quash any joint hunt with the northern Indians. They feared the Oglalas might resume hostilities or bolt for Canada to join Sitting Bull. At Red Cloud Agency, the agency leaders also favored postponement, citing the greater importance of the Washington delegation. Even young man, afraid of his horse, agreed. Crazy Horse's village, already packed and poised on Little Cottonwood Creek, felt the closing jaws of delay. Touch the Clouds sent word that his people would not join. Clark renewed his invitations for talks. Crazy Horse told the lieutenant he wanted to do right, but needed time to consider. He refused to attend further meetings at the post, even when scouts drew back pay. In the village council, his voice rang clear. He wanted to go on with the hunt immediately. His refusals grew sharper. To Clark's messengers, he declared, in a bitter twist of words, that he was not looking for any great father. His father was with him, and there was no great father between him and the Great Spirit. Old suspicions, never fully buried, roared back to life. Frank Gruard found his old friend in a grim, resigned mood, reminiscent of the days after his daughter's death. Crazy Horse described a haunting dream, standing on a mountain peak, watching an eagle soar high above. Suddenly the eagle folded its wings and fell dead at his feet, pierced by an arrow. In the dream's merciless logic, he knew the eagle was himself. He was looking for death, he told Gruard, and believed it would soon come to him. Nellie Larrabee became a powerful voice in those critical days. She confirmed his deepening paranoia, warning that the delegation was a trap. Once in Washington, he would be imprisoned and never allowed to return. Uncle's Spotted Crow and Black Elk echoed her fears. John Provost, a half-breed scout, brought supposed inside knowledge of islands in the sea where war leaders were sent to die. Crazy Horse listened. Clark, Agent Irwin, and Lieutenant Colonel Bradley now pressed Crazy Horse harder than ever. After the war chief's defiant stand on August 18th, in which he not only refused to go to Washington, but tried to dictate the entire delegation and throw away major chiefs like Red Cloud, the officers saw him as the single greatest obstacle to peace. They were determined to secure a strong delegation for the journey east and feared that Crazy Horse, left unchecked, might spark fresh unrest. What had begun as Clark's patient attempts at persuasion had hardened into a campaign of relentless pressure. Informers slipped through the northern village like shadows. Woman Dress, a cousin of Red Cloud's, serving in Crazy Horse's own scout company, loitered with plausible excuses. Little Wolf paid court to a girl in the teepee next door, listening with one ear to every conversation in the war chief's lodge. Frank Gruard and others moved among the people, watching and reporting back to Clark. Under this constant, invisible surveillance, Crazy Horse's nerves began to fray. His old mood swings, periods of withdrawn silence followed by bursts of furious activity, grew sharper and more extreme. Defections soon followed. The first and most painful came from one of his oldest comrades. Lieutenant Clark had asked He-Dog, a respected shirt-wearer and longtime friend of Crazy Horse, to extend a personal invitation for the war chief to come to the post for talks. It was meant to be a gesture of goodwill between old allies. But when He-Dog arrived at the village, Crazy Horse was pointedly absent, a deliberate and humiliating snub in Lakota custom. When the two men finally spoke, Crazy Horse flatly refused the invitation, though he offered his condition for going to Washington, that the agency must first be moved to Beaver Creek. The rejection cut deep. He-Dog felt bad, stung by the cold dismissal from the man he had ridden with through so many battles. Hurt and already troubled by Crazy Horse's deepening alienation, He-Dog made his decision. He ordered the lodges of his sorebacks Teospaye struck and moved them across the White River Valley, pitching camp nearer to his uncle Red Cloud and the agency bands. After 10 days of withdrawal, Crazy Horse emerged with renewed purpose. On August 15th, he and Little Big Man rode to Camp Robinson to meet Bradley. Little Big Man consented to the Washington trip. Crazy Horse gave no satisfactory reply. That evening, he summoned 20 trusted men. Under cover of darkness, a party led by 2 Lance slipped east toward Spotted Tail Agency, carrying tobacco to invite Touch the Clouds and the northern leaders to unite on Little Cottonwood Creek. The messengers returned the next day like a defeated war party. The tobacco had been returned unopened. The Brulés had their own plans, retaining the existing agency or moving down White River. A special annuity distribution loomed. Touch the Clouds would not risk it. On August 17th, all Oglala and Arapaho leaders gathered at Red Cloud Agency. Clark read Crook's latest telegram, stressing that Crazy Horse in particular was wanted in Washington. The next morning, August 18th, a large northern delegation rode into Camp Robinson. This time, Crazy Horse alone spoke. He declared flatly that he would not go east. "I am not going there. I wanted to go, but you have changed my mind. Still deep in my heart, I hold that place on Beaver Creek where I want my agency." He claimed the right, as tribal war chief, to veto agency delegates, naming Red Cloud, Spotted Tail, and Little Wound to be thrown away. Only the men he selected, mostly northern leaders, should go. Clark was stunned, but replied firmly. The delegation's composition was already decided. The northern village was only a small part of the whole. Red Cloud and the others would attend. The tension in the room was electric. Crazy Horse left before Clark could speak privately with the deciders. Later, the lieutenant reported to Crook a profound shift in his thinking. Crazy Horse's power, he wrote, could be easily broken at the present time, and I believe it necessary. Only force, Clark now believed, would work. Kindness the war chief saw as weakness. The August 18th Council was a turning point. Friction between Crazy Horse and the deciders deepened. Moderates complained to Irwin of the war chief's dictatorial manners and disregard for his people's comfort. On August 25th, Irwin noted that leading men of the band had drawn off from Crazy Horse, determined to keep their promises to Crook. The village split. Little Big Man, Big Road, and others moved 3 miles southeast to White River, opposite Little White Clay Creek. Little Hawk remained loyal. Both sides hoped the breach was temporary. Then, on August 26th, startling intelligence reached the agencies. Sitting Bull, it was said, had quarreled with British authorities, recrossed the border, and was coming south toward the Powder River country. 31 Lakota scouts returning from service with the 5th Cavalry brought the rumor with them. The two factions of the northern village reunited at once. Defections were few. Crazy Horse seized the moment, reimposing control. He argued that a prompt departure could reunite the northern nation for the fall hunts. Intelligence reports reaching Bradley described him as having become hostile. The village council formally shifted from peacetime governance to war leadership. In Lakota tradition, this meant the camp gave supreme authority to the war chief during times of danger or major movement. Crazy Horse stood supreme. He invited war leaders to form the Blatahunka. Black Fox, recently arrived from Spotted Tail, was named chief lieutenant. The moderate deciders were marginalized. Plans for immediate departure accelerated. By August 30th, word reached Camp Robinson that Crazy Horse and his warriors were ready to decamp and join Sitting Bull. From the U.S. military's perspective, refusing to cooperate, planning to leave the agency without permission, and talking about joining Sitting Bull equaled hostility. However, there is no solid evidence that Crazy Horse was calling for war at this point. He was still framing his actions around the promises made to him at surrender, particularly the right to have an agency on Beaver Creek and the freedom to hunt. Still, his renewed dominance and talk of immediate departure created real alarm among the soldiers and agency officials. Lieutenant Clark, meanwhile, had ordered the war chief, still First Sergeant of Scout Company C, to prepare for possible action against the Nez Perce far to the north. The storm clouds gathered thick over White River. The eagle in Crazy Horse's dream had already folded its wings. What remained was the long, terrible fall.
And that brings us to the end of this chapter of Spirit of the Thunder People, the life of Crazy Horse. As always, this series is a dramatized retelling grounded in real people, real places, and real events. We work to honor the historical record while shaping a narrative that lets us feel the human weight of these moments. Certain details are adapted for clarity and dramatic flow, but the heart of the story remains rooted in documented accounts and the lived experiences of the Lakota and their allies. Next time on Chronicles of the Old West, The summer light begins to fade, and with it the fragile balance that held the northern village together. Promises made in spring begin to unravel. Old rivalries sharpen into open hostility. And as the agencies tighten their grip, Crazy Horse finds himself walking a narrowing path, one where every word is watched, every gesture interpreted, and every decision carries consequences that reach far beyond his own lodge. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Your support helps us bring more of these stories to life. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on Chronicles of the Old West.